Before Keanu Reeves became one of Hollywood's most recognizable and surprisingly beloved stars, before The Matrix turned him into an international icon, and before John Wick introduced an entirely new generation to his particular brand of action cinema, his life had already been shaped by uncertainty, constant change, extraordinary success, and personal losses that had nothing to do with the movies audiences knew him for. Keanu Reeves was born on September 2, 1964 in Beirut, Lebanon, to Patricia Taylor, an English costume designer and performer, and Samuel Nowlin Reeves Jr., an American whose family background included native Hawaiian and Chinese ancestry. But despite being born into a multicultural family, Keanu's childhood was not defined by stability. Because after his parents divorced when he was still very young, his life became a series of moves that eventually took him from Lebanon to Australia, then to New York, and finally to Toronto, where he would spend much of his childhood and being discovering the world of acting. School was never particularly easy for Keanu, and he attended several different schools before eventually leaving without graduating. But outside the traditional classroom environment, he began finding something that seemed to make far more sense to him, because acting gave him an opportunity to step into completely different worlds, experiment with different personalities, and express himself in a way that the conventional education system never seemed to encourage. As a teenager, Keanu began appearing in theater productions and taking acting classes, and what had initially looked like an uncertain interest gradually started becoming something much more serious, until eventually the young actor made a decision that would completely change the direction of his life. He left Canada and moved to Los Angeles, a city filled with thousands of aspiring actors who were all competing for the same auditions, the same opportunities, and the same chance to convince Hollywood that they deserve to be noticed. At that point, Keanu wasn't a superstar, and there was certainly no guarantee that he was simply another young actor trying to build a career from almost nothing, taking television appearances, commercials, and small film roles while slowly learning how the industry worked and waiting for the opportunity that might finally change everything. That opportunity began to arrive when Keanu was cast as Ted Logan in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, a 1989 comedy about two slightly clueless teenagers who travel through history in an attempt to complete a school assignment. And although the role was almost the opposite of the serious, physically demanding characters that would eventually define much of his career, the film became a surprising success and introduced Keanu to a much larger audience. But instead of allowing that success to determine the kind of actor he would become, Keanu started making choices that were considerably more unpredictable, moving between comedy, drama, independent cinema, and action films. And one of the most important examples of this came with My Own Private Idaho, where he appeared alongside River Phoenix in a performance that showed audiences there was far more to him than the laid-back teenager they had seen in Bill and Ted. Then came Point Break, and suddenly Keanu was demonstrating that he could carry a completely different kind of film. But the real transformation arrived in 1994, when he starred in Speed alongside Sandra Bullock, playing Los Angeles police officer Jack Trevin, a character who had to keep a city bus moving above a dangerous speed while trying to prevent a bomb from exploding. Speed became a major commercial success, and almost overnight, Keanu Reeves was no longer simply a young actor with potential. He was an established Hollywood star whose name could help carry a major studio action movie. But even at that point, Hollywood still had no idea just how dramatically his career was about to change. Because while his professional life was accelerating, his personal life was moving in a completely different direction. And in the late 1990s, Keanu became involved with Jennifer Syme, a relationship that eventually led to the couple expecting a child together. But in December 1999, their daughter, Ava Archer Syme Reeves, was stillborn, an unimaginable loss that deeply affected both of them and changed the course of their relationship. The relationship eventually ended, but Keanu and Jennifer remained connected. And then, less than 2 years later, another tragedy occurred when Jennifer Syme died in a car accident in Los Angeles in April 2001 at the age of only 28, leaving Keanu to deal with another devastating loss while his professional life was simultaneously reaching a level of success that most actors could only dream about. Because just 2 years before Jennifer's death, the world had been introduced to a character who would completely redefine Keanu Reeves' career. In 1999, The Matrix arrived in theaters with an idea that immediately captured the imagination of audiences around the world. What if the reality you believed you were living in was actually an enormous artificial system? And what if one ordinary person could discover the truth hidden behind it? Keanu played Thomas Anderson, a computer programmer and hacker who lives under the online identity Neo, and when the character is eventually pulled into the conflict between humanity and the machines, Keanu had to do something he never done on that scale before, combining dramatic performance with extensive martial arts training and physically demanding choreography that required months of preparation. The result changed everything. The Matrix became a global phenomenon. Neo became one of the defining characters of modern science fiction, and Keanu Reeves went from being a successful Hollywood actor to an international movie star whose face was suddenly recognized in almost every part of the world. But there was an interesting contradiction between Neo and the man playing him, because while Neo was mysterious, powerful, and eventually almost mythological in the world of the films, Keanu Reeves himself developed a reputation for being unusually private, understated, and remarkably uninterested in behaving like the stereotypical Hollywood celebrity. And that contrast became even more fascinating as the public began constructing its own image of him, because over the years, stories about Keanu being generous, humble, or unusually kind started spreading across the internet, with some stories based on real events and others becoming exaggerated as they were repeated, transformed, and eventually treated as established facts. The important thing, however, is that Keanu's reputation didn't appear from nowhere, because throughout his career, he has maintained a relatively private lifestyle, supported charitable causes, continued pursuing interests outside traditional celebrity culture, and repeatedly avoided turning every aspect of his personal life into public entertainment. One of those interests was motorcycles, while another was music, and for years, Keanu was also known as the bassist for the rock band Dogstar, which he joined in the early 1990s, meaning that even while his acting career was becoming increasingly successful, he continued performing music and maintaining a creative identity that had very little to do with the image of a conventional Hollywood superstar. Then, after the enormous success of the Matrix trilogy, Keanu entered another unusual period in his career, because although he remained one of the most recognizable actors in the world, not every film he appeared in became a major success, and some of his projects received mixed reaction from audiences and critics, creating the kind of career slowdown that can be particularly difficult for an actor who has already reached the highest levels of fame. If you wanna see what will happen for Keanu Reeves' life, stay tuned for the upcoming video because this video has the second part which will complete his life story.